Hi, good evening, everyone. Ankita and me are here to do some discussions on the Kerala Assistant Professor exam. Ankita, yesterday we had an orientation
Yes.
and we looked at the syllabus in general. Today's topic is descriptive writing essential tips. We want to discuss some essential techniques of descriptive writing because a lot of people these days are used to the objective type exam in NET and all, and they're finding it difficult to write. So I strongly recommend that before the exam, people should get a lot of practice writing. Here in our paid course, we are giving assignments. We are going to give assignments and we will evaluate the assignments several times, helping people to structure their answers better. So those who are preparing for this exam or any descriptive writing exam should start writing. Today, I'm just taking two texts, and we are not going into many complicated levels of writing or anything. Let us take a simple, take a look at the simple essentials of writing.
Okay.
And as we practice like that, we can improve. That is what I think. Every week, we will be doing discussions based on one particular exam. This week, it will be Kerala Assistant Professor. And next week, it will be Karnataka Assistant Professor. So again, Kerala Assistant Professor will come back after a few weeks. Like that, we are planning. And every day, there will be a focus for the sessions. Every day, we will focus on one aspect of writing or the exam. Tomorrow, I think we'll talk about culture studies pertaining to the Kerala Assistant Professor exam. Then we'll talk about linguistics and ELT quickly. Then we will look at how to cover the syllabus quickly. And lastly, on Friday, we'll do MCQs and we'll see how they can be used to do descriptive writing. So, dear friends, Ankita and me, we have made a PPT. We are not exhaustively looking at. Can you see clearly, Ankita?
Yes, the PPT is visible.
You can?
Yes.
You can see my PPT?
Yes, it is clearly visible.
Okay.
Huh.
My laptop says it is paused.
Oh, no, it is clearly visible.
Okay. So, Kerala PSC Assistant Professor, descriptive writing is what we are going to talk about. So, Ankita, let us take one question first.
Okay.
Do you see the question?
Not yet.
Oh, that is why. I think there is a glitch here. There was an update recently and then I lost it. Okay, doesn't matter. We have jugaad for everything. I'm not doing the slideshow. In the canonization, everybody listen to the question. In the canonization, which is a poem by John Donne, you have to study it for this exam. Donne transforms the lovers into saints through a series of paradoxical metaphors. Which interpretation best explains the logical progression of the metaphysical conceit, culminating in the canonization metaphor? There are, as all of us know, many paradoxical metaphors. These metaphors are conceits. And the central or the most important conceit is that of canonization. Ankita, do you remember some of the conceits that they use?
First of all, I remember where they talk about, I think, tapers.
Yeah.
Yes.
Flies. At first,
Yes.
he says we are flies. And then he says we are tapers. And then he says we are like the phoenix.
Yes.
And then he says like we are saints. Eagle and dove also is there. Eagle and dove also. So as I explain, we will also type in and improve the answer. We have structured like an MCQ, but only two options are there. Which of these will be right? The lovers renounce worldly ambition and therefore become literal martyrs whose suffering parallels Christian sainthood. Or their love withdraws from the social world, yet paradoxically acquires universal significance. Their love is withdrawing from the social world. They are saying, I think that is correct. Isn't it, Ankita?
Yes, because
The
from the
lovers
very
are saying that they are withdrawing from the social world. Ankita, would you like to explain that?
Because from the very first line itself, if we look at it, for God's sake, hold your tongue and let me love. So he is trying to put a stall to all the activities and questions from the society, and he tries to, enjoy and indulge in his love life.
Yes, and he
Yes.
says that if our love is not suitable for this world, it's okay. We will build it on its pretty rooms. We will be away from the world. So, yes, you are right, Ankita. The answer is their love withdraws from the social world, yet paradoxically acquires universal significance by becoming a poetic model that others may venerate. Venerate is canonization. They are venerated as saints. Now, based on the canonization, let us take a descriptive answer and we'll see how it can be written. Critically analyze the argumentative structure of Donne's canonization, Donne's poem, The Canonization. When you get a question like this, I think the first thing is you think, what is the central idea? I think many of you will not be able to see. I will zoom in like this. What is the central idea of the poem? Can you write a one sentence thesis? So I have written the answer here. Love is sacred. That is the central idea here, isn't it? Love is sacred and deserves recognition like sainthood. How do you write this in a simple introduction? How do you write the fact that love is sacred and deserves recognition? You can say something like this. In the canonization, John Donne represents love as something sacred and meaningful, isn't it? John Donne represents, you know, love as something sacred and meaningful, whereas in the society, people are not accepting love as a good thing. The poem develops an argument in which the speaker defends his love against social criticism. When people are criticizing, he's asking, what is your problem? Why are you criticizing me? My love is not harming anybody. There are no floods because of my love. There is no plague because of my love. He says that. So he is defending his love against social criticism, finally elevating it to the level of spiritual devotion and canonization. So when you get a question, the first thing that should come to your mind is that one sentence of what you are going to write. Getting it in a one sentence, that clarity will help you to write. Now, I'm not talking about the exam hall, I'm talking about writing practice. So, what is the question here? Analyze the argumentative structure. So, you have to talk about how the argument develops. This is the argument that love is defended against social criticism and slowly elevated to spiritual devotion and canonization. How does this argument develop? In the first part of the poem, he rejects social criticism. In the second part, he says, when you're preparing the answer, when you're practicing, you should look at the poem, of course. Then you won't be in doubt. We are not talking about writing in the exam hall. We are talking about preparing the answer, practicing writing. So then he says, love harms nobody. Nobody is harmed by my love. He says that there are no plagues that are caused by my love. Alas, alas, who is injured by my love? Remember, he says that. What merchants' ships have my sighs drowned? Who says my tears have overflowed his ground? Is anybody saying that? So love harms no one. And then he says the lovers can create their own world. You can understand that we are separate. We are flies, we are tapers, we are separate from everybody else. If our love is unfit for tombs and hearse, then no problem. We will build in sonnets pretty rooms. Love leads to symbolic death and rebirth, like the phoenix. And lovers become saints of love. Clear? That much is the central argument. Now, in an answer, Ankita, we should always have an introduction
Yes.
and a conclusion. In between, you should explain the argument of each stanza in the poem. Isn't it? So I looked at the poem and I have summarized it like this. First, the speaker is rejecting criticism. How do you write that in a sentence? The poem begins with the speaker rejecting social criticism. He asks others to mind their own affairs instead of judging his love. Then he says love harms nobody. The speaker argues that their love does not damage society, politics, or wealth. Therefore, others have no reason to criticize it. Then he says the lovers create their own world. We are made such by love. Do you remember that line? We are made such by love. Dante suggests that lovers create their own private worlds. And there, here you can talk about the images. Flies, tapers. Then you can say that we are the eagle and dove, then phoenix, then saints. Love at the end becomes something sacred. The speaker compares lovers to saints, suggesting that their devotion is pure and sacred. And at last, he says, the future generations will celebrate their love through poetry. So when you write the answer, when you get practice, Ankita, I think they should write down points like this.
Yes.
If they do like that for like 25 questions, they will be able to write in a very structured manner, even in the exam hall. Do you agree?
Exactly, exactly. Like generally, these answers will have a typically three-part structure: introduction, body of the argument, and conclusion. So,
Yeah.
especially when we talk about the body of the argument, if you keep those arguments in points, it will be very easy for you to articulate your intervention in the answer.
Correct. Without any confusion, without superfluous writing, tuck, 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 like that, you'll be able to write. Ankita, they have to write 3-mark questions, 5-mark questions, and 8-mark questions. Right. So I just jotted down the points like this. And then how will you conclude? Thus, the poem follows a clear argumentative structure. The speaker first rejects criticism, then defends love, finally presents it as something sacred. In the conclusion, if you show that you know the structure of the poem, it will be very good. Without just hazily writing something or the other, write about the structure, write tuck, tuck, tuck the points correctly. That will really fetch you good marks. Through this argument, Donne elevates romantic love into a form of spiritual experience. Now, can we look at the entire answer? I have only written 90% of it. Some more points we can add. Critically analyze the argumentative structure of Donne's The Canonization. Dear friends on YouTube, YouTube babies, I hope you're following and enjoying this. I hope this is useful for you. You can always tell us in the chat box if it is not useful. If you want us to do something better, please tell us. In the canonization, I have written more or less the same thing here, but I have added quotations. Ankita, it is very important to add quotations so that you can show that you know the poem well. Isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
And it also shows that you are connecting your argument to the text.
Yes.
It's a very important factor. Yes.
Yeah. So for all the major poems, if not all, at least most, we should remember some lines. You should memorize some lines because it will give you an advantage over the others. So in the canonization, John Donne presents love as something sacred and meaningful. Let us write simple sentences. No need of writing complicated sentences. The poem develops as an argument in which So the poem develops as an argument. We are connecting it with the question, in which the speaker defends his love against social criticism and finally elevates it to the level of spiritual devotion and canonization. That is the introduction. The introduction shows that you know what you're talking about, you know the structure. The poem begins with the speaker rejecting social criticism. You can avoid that repetition if you want. I have repeated, but when you write and practice, you can avoid it and edit it. For God's sake, hold your tongue and let me love. See, I have quoted here. That quotation is important. He asks others to mind their own affairs instead of judging his love. The speaker argues that their love does not damage society, politics, or wealth. Again, I've quoted. Watch what merchants' ships have my sighs drowned. Who says my tears have overflowed their ground? Two lines you can quote if you remember. And he says, in the next stanza, he says, we can die by it if not live by love. Okay, if you don't let us live, we can die by it. That's also a famous line. None suggests that the lovers create their own private world through their love. He says, we will build in sonnets pretty rooms, as well a well-wrought urn becomes the greatest ashes. The speaker compares lovers to saints. Before that, somewhere we have to add, he compares the lovers to, I will type here. He compares the lovers to flies, tapers, eagle and dove, and the phoenix. And then at last, the speaker compares lovers to saints, suggesting that their devotion is pure and sacred. In the final stanza, the speaker claims that future generations will celebrate their love through poetry. So, Ankita, my method is through keywords, you have to bring in all the points.
Yes.
Even if the sentences are not beautiful and all, it's okay,
Hmm.
because you will get marks for the keywords.
Yes. Because when we use keywords, we will maintain a coherence that will connect all the intro, body, and conclusion. It will create
Correct.
a coherence also. Yeah.
Thus, the poem follows a clear argumentative structure. The speaker first rejects, I'm reading here, first rejects criticism, then defends love, and finally presents it as something sacred. Through this argument, Dan elevates romantic love into a form of spiritual experience. When we write answers at home, we write like this. And then you can sit and edit your own answer. Make it crisp, avoid repetition. This is the way in which you should write, and this is how we get our students to practice. Our students will write many, many questions, and they will improve as writers by the time the course proceeds. This is the plan. Our paid course will be very useful. So this is not a perfect answer yet, but once you write a first draft like this, you can edit it, remove some words, and then read it again, and then practice like that, so that in the exam hall also you will get to write a better answer. Practice makes perfect. Right. Can we go on to the next question now? One more.
Yes. Huh. One
In
more
Kubla
tip.
Khan.
Sorry.
Yes, Ankita.
One more tip is when you practice writing answers, you can keep the text in front of yourself. If it's a
Yes.
poem or a play, whatever, please keep the text and see how the answer in itself, content wise, how it is corresponding to the poem in general.
Yeah.
That's a very important part. Yeah.
Right. In Kubla Khan, Coleridge juxtaposes the stately pleasure dome with the deep romantic chasm. One is a pleasure dome, the other is a deep romantic chasm, and the violent eruption of the sacred river Alf. What is the symbolic relationship between these contrasting images in the context of theories of imagination? Stately pleasure dome, romantic chasm, and then violent eruption. Ankita, would you like to read the options and see what is the answer?
Yes. So here the first option tells us that the pleasure dome signifies the artificial order imposed by human reason, whereas the chasm and erupting fountain symbolize the primal creative energy of the unconscious imagination. Next, the pleasure dome represents divine harmony, while the chasm indicates the moral corruption of the Mongol Empire under Kubla Khan.
Now, the first one seems to be the answer.
Hmm.
It is not about the moral corruption of Kubla Khan. The pleasure dome signifies the artificial order imposed by human reason. Human beings have created the dome, whereas the chasm is natural. Erupting fountain is the primal creative energy. Now, we have a question here. Kubla Khan is less a narrative poem than a meditation on the nature of poetic imagination. Do you agree to that? Is it just a narrative poem or is it about the nature of poetic imagination? Discuss this statement with close reference to the imagery and structure of the poem. So, I agree that it is about the nature of poetic imagination. Those who have read the poem will remember that towards the end, particularly, he talks about poetic imagination. So, there should be an introduction. What is the main idea of the poem? There itself, you can explain the poem a little bit. Together, it can be one paragraph. What does the poem describe? Then the main body of the answer. Remember, this question is about poetic imagination and imagery and structure. So the main body of the answer, the imagery showing the power of imagination. At this point, we can think of the different kinds of imagery in the poem. And finally, a conclusion that shows the structure of the poem. Can we proceed?
Yes. Can I say one thing about this poem?
Yes, sure.
So I think Kubla Khan by Coleridge is one of the most dense poems of Coleridge. Here, actually, many components are there which are very important. First of all, if you look at the last paragraph of this poem, Coleridge talks about the possessed poet, where he says, "And all should cry, beware, beware, his flashing eyes, his floating hair." And here, very significantly, he talks about the idea of holy dread. You can also get questions like this, that why does he mention the idea of holy dread? How can something be holy be terrifying? So the idea of divine possession or divine intervention in terms of poets, that's very important. And also here in this poem Kubla Khan, Coleridge time and again brings in the idea of anxiety of influence, which later Bloom talked about also. So there are many important components here, part by part in this poem, which can be very important by themselves. Okay, especially the last part of this poem, where Coleridge talks about mad poet, holy dread. These are very important parts of the poem.
Yes, we are coming to that only in the next slides. So how can be the introduction? Samuel Taylor Coleridge's Kubla Khan is often read not as a narrative poem but as a meditation on the power of imagination. Now, it is very important to remember that Coleridge developed the theory of imagination much later. It was only in 1817 that he wrote Biographia Literaria, developing the theory of imagination. At the time when he wrote Kubla Khan, he is still in a very initial state of his theory of imagination, if at all it was there. However, he understood the importance of the human mind. He was influenced by David Hartley and also Wordsworth. And it is eventually that his theory would crystallize into what it is in Biographia Literaria. So we cannot say that it is the same imagination that he's talking about here, but it is still imagination. Instead of telling a continuous story, the poem presents a series of vivid images that reflect the mysterious and creative nature of imagination. And he is, in a very powerful manner, connecting nature with the human mind. Coleridge is connecting nature with the human mind. Incidentally, I'm not digressing, but This next week, I'm going to Gujarat to give a keynote address on how, in all Western and Eastern aesthetics, nature, landscape, human mind, emotions are all integrated in a unique pattern. In Dravidian aesthetics, there is the Thinai aesthetics. Northrop Frye talked about myth criticism and archetypal criticism. In Sanskrit literature and philosophy, you see that all poetic ideas are illustrated through landscape, the flowing breeze, the river. Human mind is connected to nature in Sanskrit also, and incidentally here also. Kubla Khan also connects that wild elemental nature to the working of the imagination. I am reminded of how Ted Hughes talks about the coming of creativity or poetic creativity in the form of a fox. So it is all beautifully interconnected in so many ways. Now, a brief explanation of the poem. The poem describes the pleasure dome built by Kubla Khan in the exotic land of Xanadu. You can write like that. However, the description quickly shifts to strange and powerful images of rivers, caves, and supernatural landscapes, where a woman will wail for her demon lover. And these images create an atmosphere of mystery rather than a clear narrative. He is mystical and mysterious in this part of the poem. Now, the main body of the answer. Coleridge creates a dream-like setting through rich sensory imagery. He talks about gardens bright with sinuous rills, forests ancient as the hills. These vivid images stimulate the reader's senses and demonstrate the creative power of poetic imagination. Poetic imagination is not something independent that we have. Poetic imagination is what comes from the motivation we get from nature. The violent description of the sacred river, the deep chasm, suggests the uncontrollable energy of imagination, which is exotic and orientalist also. Nature in the poem appears dynamic and mysterious, and he gives it a womanly form. He said, a damsel with a dulcimer. And she is an Abyssinian maid. Where is Abyssinia? Egypt, Africa. So she's an African woman playing a dulcimer. It is an Orientalist image. And then in the final part of the poem, the speaker imagines a poet inspired by that magical song, by a magical song of the damsel with the dulcimer, an Abyssinian maid. Here, the imagery directly connects imagination with poetic creation. That is when, like the Vishwarupam of God, you see, as Ankita said, the possessed poet, the poet who is divinely inspired. His flashing eyes, his floating hair, weave a circle round him thrice, for he on honey dew hath fed and drunk the milk of paradise. That is how he winds up the poem, because the poet is here a creator. The poet is not just an ordinary person, the poet is a creator. So you can conclude and say that Kubla Khan is not a narrative poem, but a reflection on poetic imagination through vivid imagery and a dream-like structure. These are all keywords. And I'm going to add more keywords as I talk to you about the entire answer. Coleridge explores the mysterious and creative power of the poetic mind. Now, the earlier question we wrote like a 3-mark answer, short. Now, this one, let us write like a 5-mark answer, which is longer. Kubla Khan is less a narrative poem than a meditation on the nature of poetic imagination. Look at this. Samuel Taylor Coleridge's Kubla Khan. You should mention the year wherever possible. You can also mention the context. Composed in the initial phase of the Romantic movement. Such phrases can be added. I have not added now. I'm saying you can still edit it. I have written only the first part of the poem. And it is not just a narrative poem, but a meditation on the power of poetic imagination. Instead of telling a continuous story, the poem presents a series of vivid images. That is very important. It is not one coherent Aristotelian plot that you have here. It reflects the mysterious and creative nature of imagination. Imagination is like that. It comes in spurts, like that river, Alf. The poem describes the pleasure dome built by Kubla Khan in the exotic land of Xanadu. And I've quoted lines here. In Xanadu did Kubla Khan a stately pleasure dome decree, where Alf, the sacred river, ran through caverns measureless to man, down to a sunless sea. These are all extremely famous poems. It would be good if you quote 3, 4 lines, and also if you remember these lines. It is extremely important that you show the change in the poem, how the poem's meaning is shifting. The description quickly shifts to a strange, powerful images of rivers, caves, and supernatural landscapes, describing it as a savage place where a woman could wail for her demon lover. That is a beautiful image, an oriental image, where an oriental woman, it is an oriental image that he has presented here. These images create an atmosphere of mystery rather than a clear narrative. It is not a rational, logical development, it's just mysterious. Why is he talking about all this? In this context, you can also mention that this is the result of a dream. He had an opium induced dream. This poem, based on a, like this, you should add keywords, which is why I did not add it prior. Based on an opium induced dream. Like that, you can add a phrase. Okay. Now, you know that a man from Perlock came and woke him up. That is how he sat down and wrote the 200 lines in this poem. Now, moving on, you are coming to the main body of the answer, where you talk about the imagery. You can say the imagery in the poem is of 3 types. Sensory imagery is there, mystical and mysterious imagery is there, and also finally the poetic imagery. Initially, Coleridge creates a dream-like setting through rich sensory imagery, such as gardens bright with sinuous rills, forests ancient as the hills. These vivid images stimulate the reader's senses and demonstrate the creative power later of imagination. The violent description of the sacred river Alf and the deep chasm suggests the uncontrollable energy of creativity and imagination. Nature in the poem appears dynamic and mysterious. I told you the second phase is mysterious imagery, reflecting the intensity of poetic creativity. In the final part of the poem, the speaker imagines a poet inspired by a magical song of a damsel with a dulcimer, of an Abyssinian maid singing on a dulcimer of Mount Abora. That is what he says. A damsel with a dulcimer singing of Mount Abora. You have to show that you know the poem, that you have read the poem. Such indication should be there. Keywords should be there here. And I will also, in the paid course, give sample answers like this. I will help students to write like this. I will help them to edit. We will do these workshops many times, and it will be tremendously useful. So if anybody is preparing for descriptive exams, this is when you should join Valat. Here, the imagery directly connects imagination with poetic creation. By the way, I have to show you something after this. I am going to show you this. I am going to show you this. Wait, after this. He says, and all who heard should see him there, and all should cry, beware, beware. The last 2 lines of the poem, for he on honey dew hath fed and drunk the milk of paradise. And you can conclude the Kubla Khan is not a narrative poem, but a reflection on poetic imagination. Through vivid imagery and a dream-like structure, Coleridge explores the mysterious and creative power of the human mind. After you write like this at home, when you practice, you should edit your answer. Make it better. Make it crisp. And when you do your own editing, the next time you write, you will write that edited answer. That is the way to create your own understanding of writing. Right, Ankita? Do you agree?
Yes. And this poem, Kubla Khan, is so rich in terms of psychoanalysis because much later in 20th century, Lacan talked about collective unconscious. But here he says that Kubla Khan heard the ancestral voices professing war. I mean, that's such a beautiful and subtle hint to collective unconscious, which later Laka talked about. It's a wonderful, wonderful, and very dense, extremely dense poem. Like how he talks about the savage place also as holy and enchanted.
Yes.
I love how he always juxtaposes savagery with holiness, how he always brings together sacred and profane.
Yeah, because this was already a discussion. This is a sublime moment that he is describing at the end of the poem. And Edmund Burke had already talked about the sublimity of terror. Everything that is beautiful is related to extremely beautiful and sublime is related to terror. That is why the holy dread, the dread is that fear that the vastness of creation is giving to the poet. So just before the period of Coleridge, this discussion was already there. And being deeply associated with German Romanticism, Coleridge was aware of and inspired by the ideas of Immanuel Kant, who talked about the picturesque, the beautiful, and the sublime. In Immanuel Kant, there is a discussion of the reproductive sublime and the productive sublime and all that. So that is where it comes from. Yes. It's a very, very beautiful poem, as you said. I just wanted to introduce to everybody our HSST books. We have HSST books, which are the same syllabus for Kerala PSE exam also. These books are being dispatched now from tomorrow onwards. These books will reach our students. And one more book is there, which will be printed and brought in 2 days. 3 such books plus one master guide on Indian Constitution. Paper 1 is also there. General paper is also there for them. So we are producing all this. Kerala assistant professor people can also buy these books because it is the same syllabus as of now. So that is a wonderful thing that is happening, the wonderful output of creativity that is happening at Valath, while Kubla Khan's poet has his own outpouring of creativity on one side. We are also pouring out our creativity in these ways. Ankita, that is the
Yes.
latest from Valath. So thank you, everyone. We'll put an end to today's session now. Tomorrow we'll come with cultural studies. Ankita, let us take a look at the syllabus and let us bring some new insights that will help
Yes.
our YouTube babies. And in our paid course, all this will be done in great length. And you know why, Ankita? Because we want our students to be assistant professors. This is the
Yes.
highest achievement they are getting, and we are there with them.
Yes.